The life of Chuck isn't necessarily going to be the Stephen King or Mike Flanagan story you're expecting or that you're used to. And that's kind of what makes it unforgettable. What starts as the end of the world becomes one of the most life-affirming films I've seen in years. Okay, The Life of Chuck. When I first heard about this movie and that it was something Mike Flanagan was directing based on a Stephen King story, I was immediately interested because I like a lot of Stephen King stories. I love Mike Flanagan's directing work. So I initially thought it was going to be something along the same lines of what we were used to when it comes to these two men, something horror, supernatural, that sort of thing. So I'll tell you right now, it's not that. It goes a little bit against the genre that they're typically known for. Now, Stephen King has written outside of the standard horror genre before, so you're probably used to that from him, like Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile. So that's not so unusual for him. But for Mike Flanagan, that was a little unusual. The story is told in reverse. So, you usually have 3 acts to a story. This starts off with Act 3, and the title of that act is Thanks, Chuck. Then it goes backwards to Act 2, which was called Buskers Forever, and then Act 3 is titled I Contain Multitudes. When the film starts off, Act 3, you're just kind of dropped into the scenario where really crazy cataclysmic things are happening in the world. There's all these terrible earthquakes, there's all these fires, California has basically fallen off the edge of the continental US, there's all this flooding, there's just all of this terrible stuff is happening, and it's been happening within the span of like 13, 14 months. So a short amount of time, it's just a lot for people to acclimate to, and it's scary, and you start to get these end of the world vibes, and it's quite frightening because I don't know about you, but I don't want to be around when the universe decides it's not going to be here anymore. It's just, just the thought of that is something super scary, you guys. So it gets started off like that. But in the midst of all of this, people are noticing these strange billboards all around town. Thanks, Chuck. And it's a picture of Chuck, who's played by Tom Hiddleston. Thanks for 39 years. And people are like, who the heck is this Chuck guy? Nobody knows who the heck he is. And so then that act ends abruptly on a pretty climactic note. And then we pick up with Act 2, Buskers Forever, and then we see Chuck. We're finally introduced more explicitly to Chuck and some stuff that goes on with him in that part, and then we go backwards to Act 1. The title of that, as I said, is I Contain Multitudes, and that shows us Chuck from his childhood into his teenage years. And for me, it wasn't until Act 1 that I pieced together what the heck was actually going on. And when I realized it, it was like, oh, wow, okay. And at that point, you realize this is definitely much more of a human drama, character drama. There is a touch of something supernatural. It's just kind of something there on the periphery. It's not anything that's overbearing. It's not anything that is actually the focus of the story. And I really, really enjoyed how everything was wrapped up. I enjoyed how it transitioned from something very dark and mysterious, and the internet was down and people were complaining about Pornhub being down, and that's just mean. That was David Desmalchin that said that line. That was pretty funny. And then as it goes on, it gradually reveals a much deeper, more touching story as you start to see these different pieces come together. Like I said, the mysterious supernatural undertones. There's this locked off room in Chuck's house. He lives with his grandparents, and you don't know. It's finally revealed to you as the story goes on. Obviously, it's revealed to you, and then the very, very final scene of the film has to do with this mysterious room. It eventually becomes clear that This story is more about a reflection on life, mortality, memory, all the people that we have known and touched in our lifetime, not physically touched, but, emotionally touched, been connected with. And by the time everything wraps up, it's so emotionally powerful. That final act, the final scene of the final act, Act 1, that final scene moved me so much. It brought me to tears when I fully comprehended the meaning and the message contained in this story. And it was truly a gut punch to me in all the right ways. Let's just say that. I appreciated a lot of the dialogue in here. There is a particular discussion that Mark Hamill's character has with Chuck. Mark Hamill is his grandfather. He has this really interesting conversation about math and how math, it doesn't lie, it doesn't make mistakes, it's beautiful, it's in everything we do, it's even in the dance that you do, because Chuck he likes to dance. And the way that conversation played out and other conversations that were had in this film, especially there was a conversation Chuck had with one of his teachers played by Mike Flanagan's wife. Those conversations, or the way that dialogue occurred, reminded me in a lot of ways of the deep discussions that were had in a midnight mass about religion and theology and life and faith and forgiveness and redemption and all that. And I really, really appreciated those types of conversations that happened. And there was that going on in here as well. The cast in here, it's an excellent cast, very big. You will recognize a lot of people that Flanagan has worked with in this movie. Flanagan himself makes a very brief appearance. People that he's worked with in pretty much everything, including Mark Hamill, who I've already mentioned. He gives a standout performance in here. He was very, very good. He played a grandfather who he was an alcoholic. He was drowning his grief and his fears in the bottle. And you get the sense that he's got this very heavy emotional weight that he's carrying, and you don't fully understand what it is. I mean, you think you know what it is, and to some extent that is correct, what you think it is, but then you realize later what it really was and how, yes, that could be something that would truly eat a person alive. It becomes even more profound once you realize this. This has to be one of the most moving roles I've seen from Hamill. He did a fantastic job in here. I would like to see him nominated for something. I was so pulled into his portrayal of this character and the relationship that he had with his grandson. Very moving, very sweet, just wonderful chemistry throughout the entire movie, all of the actors. There is also a narrator that tells the story, and it took me forever. I could not place this voice. Like, where have I heard this voice before? It was Nick Offerman. He's got this very quirky voice, a very warm voice telling this story, adds a unique tone to the film, but also just some of the dialogue that he would say too. It was funny. He was like inserting some like profanity and annoyance at certain things that were going on. It was just, I don't know. I thought it was really a well done tool for purposes of telling this story. And it does help to kind of anchor the sort of abstractness of the different parts. It kind of helps to anchor that together because it ties the stories together. It tells you, basically, it helps you along the way without necessarily doing too much telling, because, sometimes that can be a problem. Show, don't tell. Sometimes some telling is good. Depends how it's done. And I felt like in this regard, it was done pretty well. I also appreciated some recurring sort of philosophical, almost poetic themes to the story. There is a line of dialogue, I think in Act 3, the first part of the film, where one of the characters, and they're talking about all of this stuff that's going on with the earth. And one of the characters addresses, like everybody thinks this is because of, what we're doing to the earth. And the character said, we are puny compared to the great clock of the universe. I think that was the exact line that he said. And I was thinking, yeah, that's really true. And this movie does a good job at making you feel equal parts small in the grand scheme of everything, but at the same time large in your own life and this big world that you have within your own self. And it balanced that so well. It also, the Walt Whitman poem. I don't know if this is the title of the poem or just part of a line from the poem, "I contain multitudes." That takes on a very profound meaning by the end. And the doorway to that is opened up in in the conversation that Chuck is having with his teacher. I appreciated that so much. The different scenes of character interactions, these thoughtful conversations that make you reflect on your own life. It has a universal appeal, I think. This is just a beautiful film. I highly recommend it. Make sure you go in with the understanding that this is not going to be your typical Mike Flanagan film. One of the things I love about Mike Flanagan is how he can tell such a great suspenseful story, but it has so much depth to it. And he has been a director that I have started to naturally gravitate to. Anytime I hear his name is attached to something, yes, I'm immediately interested. He's just a gifted storyteller, someone that can reach across that screen and just yank your heartstrings so hard. And I really, really love that. I love that this movie was a deeply human story that reminds us of beauty in the small things, beauty in the ordinary, and that our life is our universe. That is our world. And I thought it was so well done, so moving. This is a film that is going to stay with me for a long time. And I know without a doubt that this is going to end up on my top 10 of the year. In fact, pretty sure it has very quickly slid into slot number 2. It is Displaced Sinners, but that's okay. This one has an emotional depth and weight to it that really resonated with me. I think if you give it a chance, hopefully it will resonate with you as well. Anyway, that's about all I have to say for now about The Life of Chuck. If you guys get a chance to check it out, don't know how long it's going to be in the theater. This is not a big blockbustery film, but let me know what you think if you get around to seeing it, and also how it compares to the Stephen King short story that it's based on. That's it for this one, you guys. Nos vemos.